Resident Evil Requiem is on the way, and I couldn't be more excited. I haven't been this ecstatic for a game announcement, well, since Doom the Dark Ages, which we will cover on the channel soon. So while creative director Koji Nakanishi is cooking up Resident Evil Requiem, now is the perfect time to review Resident Evil 7. To me, it makes more sense now than ever, since both games are under Koji Nakanishi's vision. While my opinions on RE7 have changed over time, it is still the game that revived the Resident Evil franchise, so I must give it respect in that regard. I am no stranger to Resident Evil 7, and I have played it numerous times. Hell, I worked my way up to the Platinum Trophy a few years back. So I am confident that in this review, I will do this game justice by highlighting its strengths, all the while pointing out its fair share of criticisms. Now, with all that being said, let's get right into it.
Hey baby! I just wanted to send a quick hello and I love you.
One of Resident Evil 7's main appeal is its first ever shift into the first-person perspective for the series, at least for the main entries, and that isn't something that everyone is particularly fond of. There are still plenty of fans that would much rather have a game with static camera perspectives like in the originals, or have it be in third person like the recent remakes. I, for one, don't mind the change at all. I think despite its tight field of view, it still allows for a well-made and satisfying gameplay experience. It's a change that encourages you to become more aware of your surroundings. It is very easy to miss items if you are meticulous in your exploration. You could be leaving a room, confident that you picked up all the resources that were there, only to find out later that you missed crucial resources hiding in a corner. I also believe the change into first person allows us to lean into the horror a little bit more. I'm not saying past entries weren't immersive or anything. I'm just saying that because of this change, it advised the horror aspects to be more aggressive and in your face this time around. Where the original entry relied more so on its different static camera angles to convey a creepy atmosphere. Moving on. Resource management was mostly done extremely well. There were many instances on my latest playthrough where I had to think thoroughly about which items I should keep and which I should discard, because I never felt like I had enough space to keep everything I wanted. Real good stuff here. Although, resources do eventually become less valuable further into the game. It starts to give you way too much around the end of the point where it no longer becomes a survival horror game, and derails further into the action. Fortunately, this issue isn't representative of the entire experience, as I was often desperate for ammo after facing some of the Resident Evil 7's brand new enemies and bosses. The Molded is this title's brand new enemy and the only ones for that matter. Many are rather displeased with Resident Evil 7's enemies and its lack of variety in them. While I do strongly agree that the game would have greatly benefited from having new enemies other than the Molded be introduced, it still doesn't make them a bad enemy. In fact, I love the Molded. I think they're awesome. They can be very hard to hit since they often move their heads and stumble around trying to reach you. I like how they react to your attacks. It elevates the immersion. And I love how they sometimes try to block your shots, like Ganados from Resident Evil 4. There's also the Fat Molded, which is your standard big enemy. They vomit acid at you and it can reach from long distances. Not to mention, it also does a shit ton of damage. Oh, and how can I forget the Crawling Molded? One of the most frustrating enemies in the franchise. They can kill you in seconds if you're not careful, even on normal difficulty. As a result, it makes them one of the best foes in the franchise. Now for the boss fights. Overall, I think they're okay. The chainsaw fight with Jack Baker is probably the weakest one. He just felt basic, but it did feel good to kill him with a chainsaw. Marguerite is a fun one. It's satisfying to take her down with all the weapons and resources you acquired prior to the boss fight, especially if you have the grenade launcher. My biggest gripes with her boss fight is that her attacks can seem kind of slow, and it can be difficult to pinpoint where she is whenever she lays her eggs. You'll hear an audio cue that informs you that she's doing it, but it's still hard to find out where she is sometimes, which leads to you looking around like an idiot only to be annoyed when you can't find her. And it doesn't help that, much like the rest of the game, the area is dark, making it even harder to spot her. Then you fight Jack once more as a giant molded creature. I think this one's alright. He has obvious weak points, which are his orange eyeballs, but I do like how this fight is perfectly integrated for the first person formula that they are going for. You're looking up to eliminate his weak points that are hiding under him, and aiming at his eyeballs feel appropriate to a first person shooter. I don't know how to explain it. Resident Evil 7 has all your standard Resident Evil locations. You have a house, a cabin, a boat, and a mine. The house feels the most like a classic Resident Evil location. There are many puzzles to solve, others that you can solve later into the game. There are many containers that have valuable items which can only be unlocked by using lockpicks, that are scattered all over the map. For a lot of containers, you have to come back because there aren't enough lockpicks inside the house. In this section, you'll be stalked by Jack if you're thirsty to get the shotgun early on. I didn't do that on my latest playthrough because I felt confident enough to take down the molded with my handgun. But if this is your first playthrough, you will most likely feel compelled to get the shotgun because you can easily waste all your ammo if you don't know what you're doing. Also, I don't know why, but Jack Baker still gives me the creeps. I think it has to do with how he taunts you as you run away. It's like he knows he's going to get you. And hearing his voice as you try to run away always gives me anxiety.
As you can see, the family is only part of a gift.
The cabin is where the game begins to dip in quality for me. The only enemies you're fighting are bugs, which are incredibly underwhelming. And Marguerite feels way too easy to find your way around her. She lacks aggressivity and oppression against the player. Although, I like the solution to her section is to find the two parts of the flamethrower to be able to get around her bugs. And the section with Lucas is a lot better, as you carefully navigate his level avoiding his traps. You also get ambushed by enemies which will catch you off guard, and it's awesome. Then you get to the boat with Mia, and this is where the quality of the game suffers the most. The boat is extremely bland and forgettable, and they sort of make you do the section twice, since you also must play it through the perspective of a flashback. You also have to fight the molded again without any new changes in enemy variety. Not to mention the item box, which is now completely useless here, now that your inventory space is much larger. Finally, you play as Ethan once more in the mines. Except, all the core elements of a traditional survival horror game are thrown out the window in favor of more action. The level has one leading path, it is impossible to get lost. And then the game kind of just ends. The puzzles here are again completely fine. You never run into a puzzle too complicated or a puzzle that's too easy. You have puzzles where you must match the time on one clock to all the other clocks in the house. There's item inspection to solve solutions and key items to collect to unlock a door. Nothing new here. I am pretty conflicted on the story. On one hand, the narrative is fun and eerie, paying homage to horror movies such as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Evil Dead, and Saw. But then it lingers on cheap horror cliches like little creepy girls, well, being creepy little girls. And it just evoked more laughter than it did scares. Not that it was scary to begin with. The intro of the game, while being immersive and creepy, just goes on for way too long, especially for a Resident Evil game. Not to mention that you cannot skip any of the cutscenes, which there are plenty of in Resident Evil 7. It just makes repeat playthroughs harder to go through and a lot more boring than it needs to be. The fact that the developers even bother fixing the simple issue even after launch never fails to confuse me. Despite its flaws, Resident Evil 7 is a wonderful game. It's a game that has a good grasp on the fundamentals of the survival horror genre. It is scary and satisfying to play, and it is only really dragged down by the boat section and the lack of enemy variety. I would give it an 8 out of 10. But that is all I got for today. If ever you paid attention to my last video on Code Veronica, which I highly suggest you go check that out, I said that I was going to review Resident Evil 0, but whenever I got the chance to play it, I always thought it was extremely boring to play. So if ever you wanted a video on 0, I am incredibly sorry, because it will probably never happen. I think the game kinda sucks, I'm gonna be honest. If you're still watching, make sure to like and subscribe, and I would really appreciate it. And with that all being said, see you guys later.